Good evening and welcome to Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. I'm Chris Hansen, and tonight we continue our collaborative investigation with Weist and Moast, Under the Influence. Last episode, we took a look at Danielle Cohn and allegations that she's been exploited and otherwise by her own mother, Jennifer Archambeault, on videos that have aired all around the world on YouTube and other places. And the question arises, is it appropriate for a parent to do this to a child? And Jennifer Archambeault and Danielle Cohn aren't alone, but we do have some new exclusive information and interviews tonight. Weist and Moast is with me now. Good evening, Wes. So I think the takeaway out of this, and we're going to show people the story that we put together in a moment here. Katie Tua speaks out, who is Mikey Tua's mom. Mikey dated Danielle Cohn and takes us inside this perverse world. Is that too strong of a phrase to use?
No, I think that's the perfect wording for what's going on.
I mean, basically, in this case, you've got a woman who's pimping out her own child in a salacious way, and theoretically and potentially making millions of dollars. So let's take a look at the piece that we put together.
On September 8th, 2021, I reached out to Jennifer Archambeault with the standard request for an interview. She replied with a lawsuit threat. On that same day, I also contacted Danielle's adult boyfriend, Mason Patterson, Bang Energy, Stripe Payments, as well as Harry Gestetner and Simon Pompan, the owners of Fanfix. Fanfix is the only place that would allow Danielle to post these racy pics after her earlier account at FanFuel was terminated due to public outrage.
If you didn't know, I started a FanFuel. They had to take me off the app because people were reporting it to the police.
Harry and Simon never responded, but they did spend time on my LinkedIn, proving they are aware of what is going on and are simply choosing to ignore it.
I would love to see one fans or a FanFuel posting sexy pictures in lingerie or showy underwear. It's literally gross. It makes me uncomfortable.
Michael Weist, who appeared in part 1 of this video to tell his side of the story, has since released several episodes of an unaired documentary series that prove many of the online theories about Jennifer Archambeault are true.
Danny, how much did you just spend?
I spent like 400.
Danny!
No, that's not bad. I got like 5 rings.
Yes, it is. We have rent due tomorrow.
Okay, you can't say that because then that's literally saying that I paid the rent.
Oh, well, take that part. Action! Danny, you're spending way too much money.
Not really.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
And the Oscar goes to...
Danielle is paying the rent and supporting her family. This creates a broader problem because despite the estimated millions earned off the selling of Danielle Cohn,
What do you suppose Jennifer has made money-wise by exploiting Danielle?
Millions.
Millions.
there doesn't seem to be anything tangible to show for it. The rental houses, fancy cars, and constant trips are spitting out money as fast as it's earned, and based on statistical data, Danielle's marketability is waning. The salacious thumbnails, clickbait titles, pranks, and try-on hauls just don't seem to move the needle anymore because it's all been done dozens of times. With almost 2 million YouTube subscribers, only 5 of her last 50 videos have cracked 100,000 views. The channel grew from a little under 900,000 subscribers in January 2019 to almost double that amount by January 2020 with 1.6 million subscribers, an increase of 78%. 2020 is where things actually started to trend downwards, as Danielle's channel would only pick up an additional 250,000 subscribers from January 2020 to January 2021. an increase of just 14%, and a startling drop-off from the numbers just 12 months earlier. 2021, however, has proven to be much worse to the Danielle Cohn brand, as she actually lost 40,000 subscribers over the course of 11 months. This is a decaying brand. And while it's true that YouTube is not the one metric for measuring marketability, her 2% engagement rate on Instagram and stagnating followers on TikTok can only mean one thing. This carefully crafted money machine that has made it rain all over the lives of Jennifer Archambeault and hanger-ons is coming to an end. And the question on everyone's mind seems to be, what's next for the girl who grew up way too fast and way too young in the public spotlight?
I've said this many times. I will have an exclusive content thing. Like, I will have that, you know, like that. I feel like that is something really, really cool to have. I feel like it allows your true fans to be able to get more content from you and to be able to purchase, you know, pictures that you've never posted, you know. It's like something really cool for them.
That's been one major concern of longtime advocate for Danielle, Cohn on the Cone. Maggie has been tirelessly working to shine a light on Jennifer Archambeault, and the stress and turmoil she has experienced for trying to do what's right would be enough to make most people give up. Instead, she sat down with Chris to describe her years of trying to make a difference in Danielle's life. Katie Tua, Mikey Tua's mother, also had a seat to discuss and describe a side of the influencer industry that most of us will never see. She also answers some tough questions about what she saw while Mikey and Danielle dated, and what needs to be done to ensure this doesn't happen again. Because there are countless Jennifer Archambeaults out there willing to do whatever it takes to reach some level of fame, regardless of how fleeting that fame may be.
One of the people who's been following the Danielle Cohn saga almost from the very beginning, we'll call Maggie. You may know her from her name de plume on social media, Corn on the Cone. Maggie joins us tonight for this continuing investigation into the situation. And Maggie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you.
Give me a sense of why you started following Danielle Cohn, and what was it about her that made you become so devoted to essentially investigating this case?
Yeah, so it kind of happened by accident. I had just taken a new job where I became a mandated reporter as part of that job, and I just kind of read all of this stuff about reporting child abuse or any suspected things like that. And I happened upon a Danielle Cohn video on YouTube, and I watched it. And at the time, people were talking about how they were calling CPS kind of all together to try to get her mom held accountable for what was going on. And I was like, well, this is technically part of my job as a mandated reporter, so I'm going to call too. So I gave a call and then waited it out a couple weeks, and nothing was changing. And I realized that there was so much that had been that was not discovered yet about what was going on from me just clicking through her old videos, watching things.
As we have this discussion, Danielle Cohn is 15. When you started looking into this, she was, 12, 13.
Mm-hmm.
How does this violate, as somebody who is a mandated reporter of potential child abuse, how does this violate the law, in your opinion, having studied this?
I mean, from what I understand, just her being 12 years old, one of the very basic parts of their parent agreement that her dad had shared was that they were both supposed to be consenting to everything that she was doing, and he was not signing off on what she was doing. I think even from an outside perspective of not being a mandated reporter and not having studied these things, seeing a child in very, very small bikinis and knowing that they're earning money from doing this, it just seemed wrong right off the bat. But I think a lot of it comes from knowing that Jennifer, her mom's main source of income was her daughter. She wasn't working anymore. And the way that her daughter was bringing in money was by doing these things that just looked wrong from the outside for a 12-year-old to be doing.
Have you been able to get a sense of how much money Jennifer Archambeault has collected from this exploitation?
I wish I could say that I knew, the ballpark number, but what I do know is that she was spending, thousands of dollars on hotels. She was spending thousands of dollars on dinners, taking people to dinner. She was always paying for everything. She was paying for flights. She takes all of her boyfriends to Hawaii and Florida and that kind of thing. And so what I was told was that they would get the money and they'd have so much of it and spend it so fast.
You can see this by watching the videos that Jennifer Archambeault is living the high life at the expense of her daughter. What happened when you started to expose this on social media?
It blew up really, really fast. I've always had an anonymous account, and I've always treated it as something where it's not Danielle's fault, it's her mother's fault, especially when she was 12 years old. I mean, there's just no question that's a child. As she's gotten older, I think people would argue that she has more free will, but I still feel like she's been very, not brainwashed, but she's just been raised to behave the way that she acts now. But yeah, when I started kind of gaining traction on there, Jennifer would get all of these kids who were fans of Danielle to report my account en masse, report it as impersonation. Instagram didn't have very good
algorithms.
Yeah, they just didn't check. So, they could say I'm impersonating Danielle Cohn and immediately my account was taken down. And so after contesting a few of those bans, I finally reached a point where I wasn't allowed to contest it anymore. And I mean, I had to do things like have a picture of me like holding up my username and everything, like verifying that it was my account. I went to great lengths to keep the accounts, but no matter what I did, she always had a leg up on me. And at one point I had a Twitter account and she said that she was somehow able to get in touch with somebody at Twitter who was going to give her my IP address. I still don't think that was true, but it was, a little bit scary. She hired a lawyer supposedly who messaged me on Instagram with a cease and desist. And I still don't think that that was legitimate either, because I'm pretty sure you can't serve a cease and desist on social media. But there were a lot of threats, tons of threats of, we know who you are, we're going to find you. And also a lot of lies about who I was. They thought that they figured out who I was. And so they even like pinpointed a specific person and found like her Facebook, and people were sending her messages and stuff. And I mean, that wasn't me. So she'll just kind of make things up and stick to it. Right now, she thinks I'm like a 14-year-old girl. I still don't know where that theory came from, but it's nice because she kind of left me alone. But I've been very transparent about my age on there, that I'm an adult. When I started the page, I was 24, I think, and I was super transparent about that. So I still don't know why she thinks I'm a child.
And based upon your looking into this, who is watching these videos of Danielle Cohn? I mean, obviously there are some teen girls watching this, but who else?
Yeah, she definitely has that younger audience of females who are watching that are huge fans of her, but the majority of her fans, or people who are just watching, are men, and they're older. And there was one point where I can't remember exactly who put the information out, if Jennifer did it by accident or if somebody was able to access her analytics, but they showed that her audience was older and a lot of men. And so definitely where they're making the money and everything is not coming from that younger audience. The younger audience isn't purchasing her fan fuel and all of that to get these behind the scenes things. Like, what are they going to do? Ask their parents? No, it's the older men who are paying for it. And they're leaving comments and saying, show us pictures of your feet and all of this gross stuff to a child. So yeah.
And then there are code words like I'm getting a pedicure today, which is the buzzword for men with foot fetishes to know to tune in or to watch or to subscribe to this material.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's definitely a lot of older men who are looking at her stuff. Older as in, over 18, but mostly I would say like over like 25. And it's just, so gross. And Jennifer knows as well.
What kind of woman does this to their own child?
In the nicest way I can say, an absolutely disgusting, horrible woman. I can't understand how it's gotten to the point that it has and how she has no guilt for it. Anytime that people say something about it, it's always, oh, she's living her own life. She's doing what she wants to do. When another thing, when I started looking into it, is I found this whole documentary that was made on Danielle that most people hadn't seen yet. And I ended up republishing it with credit to them, where Danielle says, it's a lot. Like, she gets tired of doing it. She can't believe that this is what her whole life is. And so it's not like she necessarily really wanted to do it. That's what a lot of my videos also showed too, from her live streams. It's a lot of Jennifer forcing her. And that was just stuff that nobody had ever taken the time to watch it and, caption it and point out what was going on in them. I found countless clips of her saying, I want to get off of here. I don't want to do this, that kind of thing. And Jennifer's always just pushing in the background, smile more, talk to your fans. What are you doing? No, you can't get off. And it's just disgusting.
Some of this has been reported to the authorities in California, local police, and to Child Protective Services, yet nothing has been done. Why is that, do you think?
Yeah, I was told when I was reporting to CPS everything that was going on, that if Danielle did not say, I'm being abused, I need help, I feel like something's wrong here, they couldn't do anything about it, no matter how many times they showed up, because every time they got there, they'd say, are you okay? And she'd say, yeah. And so, they'd interview Jennifer, they'd look at what was going on, whether it was from clips online or posts or whatever it is. So they had the evidence that they needed going into it. But then they got there and Danielle said, no, I'm good.
Based upon everything you know, why is Danielle's father so fearful of intervening here?
I think that anybody could see, I don't know him personally. I haven't really, talked to him about it, so I can't speak for him. But I think that if you have a mother like that who is so, I've got videos that show the way that she talks about Dustin, Danielle's dad, who's so alienating with her child that, like, if he were to try to do something, and I've seen it happen before where she frames it like he's in it for money, he's in it for this. Like, there was a point where people tried to raise money so that he could take Jennifer to court and get the parental agreement settled and that kind of thing. Well, then that gets flipped into, this is all about money. He's going to keep the money. He doesn't care about Danielle. I've seen videos of her specifically telling Danielle, he doesn't care about you. I care about you. So I think my guess is that he doesn't insert himself into this more than he already has, because he's trying to hold on to what little relationship he has left with his daughter.
And it's not just Danielle Cohn, as if that wasn't bad enough. There's collateral damage here. Other kids in this ring, if you will, have suffered. Mikey Tua, for instance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to speak with Mikey at length back in January of 2020. We spoke on the phone, and he was actually the one that offered to talk on the phone. I had reached out over a message, and he said, why don't we talk about this? And he was a minor at the time. So I said, I want your parents' permission, and I want a parent present or an adult present. He ended up having his brother with him because his brother was an adult. So I let it slide. But yeah, he told me some very, very horrible things that happened not only to Danielle, but to him. And there's definitely a lot of collateral damage involved with this.
And Katie Tua, who is Mikey's mom, who's also in that business in a way, it would seem she understands a legitimate way to operate in that space. She's outraged by what Jennifer Archambeault has done.
Yeah, Katie's great. I see what she does with other kids and manages them, and I've spoken to her a couple of times. There was also a long time that Jennifer and that whole crowd thought that I was Katie Tua. So I'd love to clear up right now that I am not Katie Tua. she knows how to do this legitimately and how to look out for the kids. Jennifer just has no interest in doing that.
And there have been other victims besides obviously Danielle and Mikey Tua.
Yeah, definitely any of her underage boyfriends that she's had, and there's been a handful of them, as well as just friends that she's had. Her mom has definitely set them up on live streams or doing certain brand deals that are very, revealing, if it's like a bikini haul or whatever with her friends who are girls. And it it's definitely not just limited to Danielle and her boyfriends. It's been Danielle and her friends as well. But Jennifer's also just communicated with just a gross amount of children and talk to them as if she's Danielle, was what I was told by people who were close to Danielle. I wholeheartedly think that Jennifer is a predator, that she's groomed children that she's met online, and that she has absolutely exploited the people who have come into contact with her daughter, just other influencers who have been involved with her.
What toll did this take on you, your effort to expose this exploitation?
It was very frustrating. I mean, I think I even have a recording of me speaking to CPS on the phone the time that they told me that there was nothing that they could do about it. I mean, I cried. It was so frustrating because there's just so much showing that there's so much wrong happening and there's nothing that anybody can do. And you put so much time into it. You've got people harassing you and everything, and all for it to just turn into nothing was very frustrating and mentally taxing. I think I definitely stopped doing it at the right time, because now coming back into it, I feel okay. I got a good break from it. I'm ready to deal with whatever BS Jennifer throws at me at this point. But it was also really hard because none of my friends know about this. I eventually told my boyfriend, who's now my fiance, after a few months of doing it, because I was constantly on my phone talking to people, having all of these secret conversations. And so I think that's part of what makes it really difficult, is that I don't have anybody to talk to about it besides the couple of friends that I made online on that account, and then my fiance knows.
I mean, Danielle Cohn isn't the only one out there. I mean, other young women are being exploited here. Is this a cautionary tale? Is this a message to YouTube and other social media platforms that allow this to happen? Is this something that the U.S. Senate should take up in hearings, as they have with, as it has with the Facebook issues? What do you think? What's it going to take to change this?
Yeah, I absolutely think there need to be laws put in place to protect children who are in entertainment, specifically online entertainment, because kids who are on TV have a little bit of protection, as far as the law goes, but with this, it's so new that there's just nothing protecting these kids, their money, their time. If Danielle was on a commercial set or something, which we saw happen when I was looking into it, she was protected by, you can't go over this amount of hours or whatever. But with doing live streams at home and working on ads and that kind of stuff, I mean, she went live one time and talked about how she had been working on stuff for like 18 hours that day or something. Like there's no child labor laws put in place for online child stars. So I think that's one thing that definitely needs to change. I think also, it, like, trying to think of the right way to say it, like, there needs to be something with law enforcement and with CPS where, when the signs are that obvious that there's something not right going on, like it was with Danielle, they should do something. They should talk to the other parent that's involved. I think her case was really complicated because this was happening in between two states, California and Florida. So I think it made it a little bit harder to actually enact change as far as the parental agreement went. But I just feel like there's so much that was a missed opportunity there that definitely needs to be handled better.
Maggie, is there anything else you want people to know tonight?
What I really want people to take away from the whole situation is Danielle is a child. It's always been really upsetting to see people who are criticizing her for the things that she's doing. Like, while I feel like she does have more of a choice in what she's doing now, she's still 15 years old and she still has a mother who's been telling her that all of these things are the right thing to do. She knows that it makes her money, all of that. I just hate seeing the online abuse that she goes through because of people criticizing her for the things that her mom has very clearly started. It wasn't, I truly don't think that if she had a say in the things that she was doing, that she would be at the level that she's at right now. I think she would have pulled back just based on videos I've seen of her from when she was younger. But now it's like too far gone and people are still just so awful to this kid. She's like just a child. And if people want to be awful to somebody, redirect that energy to her mom, who's a monster. I mean, I just can't stress enough that she's a kid and there is an adult in the situation who has done everything wrong, and that's who deserves the blame.
Well, thank you, Maggie, because I often talk about citizen reporting online, and sometimes it's a bit of a mess and false accusations are made, but this is one of those cases where it needs to be recognized as very constructive and important. And this is one of the reasons why Weist and Moast and I started to look into this matter of Danielle Cohn, and there are many others out there, other Danielles, and we're going to continue to investigate this and demand answers. People should be upset about this. So Maggie, AKA Corn on the Cone, thank you very much for having a seat with me tonight.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Perhaps no one knows the strange dynamic between Danielle Cohn and her mother, Jennifer Archambeault, better than Katie Tua. Katie's son, Mikey, dated Danielle, and Katie's in this world as well, although on the ethical side of it. Katie, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
How would you describe Jennifer Archambeault?
As a child, she thinks like a 16-year-old child. She's not very responsible. She doesn't think things through. She's impulsive. She's dangerous.
I think she lacks empathy as well. I think she lacks perspective, and I think she lacks a lot of things. But
Michael, you've been in this world, and you tried to actually help and manage Danielle Cohn and Jennifer Archambeault as well. Describe the sort of destructive culture in which they thrive. It seems.
It's kind of crazy. They just created this ecosystem around them that is very toxic to be around, and I think Katie can speak to that a lot. That is causing destruction in other people's lives, regardless of ultimately what they need and what Jennifer wants to happen is going to happen at all costs and at any expense, whether that's my well-being, Mikey's well-being, Katie's well-being. I think I saw firsthand, just from the little bit I was around, how Jen's manipulation of certain situations would affect other people. And I would watch Danny call Mikey outside her house just to make Mason do something, or vice versa. It's just this very toxic dynamic that I believe all stems from, Jen's inability to properly raise a child, frankly.
And I saw those. Oh,
go ahead, Katie.
I was just gonna further on that Michael saw it with Mason, and there were red flags for me in the beginning when Mikey and Danielle started. They weren't even dating yet. Mikey was just getting ready to turn 16, so you could tell that they liked each other, and he actually asked her out on his 16th birthday. But we seen those same behaviors out of Jen and Danielle in the very beginning with the boyfriend prior to Mikey.
Right.
So everything that Michael is describing with Mason, we went through that with the prior boyfriend. So it just becomes a cycle, I believe. And I think that they just repeat it constantly.
Describe the relationship, Katie, between your son Mikey and Danielle.
You know, Mikey had just turned 16, and that's when he asked her out, was on his 16th birthday. But 1 year prior to this, they had met at a Musical.ly event out here in LA. And I think that Danielle definitely thought Mikey was cute back then, but Mikey was still very immature as far as he hadn't matured yet enough to know what that meant, as far as, I think she's pretty, but he was still young. And so Danielle at that point dated one of our inner circle friends, or Mikey's inner circle friends. And then when that situation ended, I think they always kind of gravitated toward one another. They stayed friends. As a matter of fact, that's what kind of brought us back around again, is when Jen was moving and asked for some help, and we went to go help them. And you could tell that, you know, Mikey and Danielle were friends, as well as JoJo and Danielle. Also, being out in LA. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Being out here in LA, I'm not a single mom, but out here in LA, it was just me and two boys. So I wanted to help a mom that was out here doing the same thing. And so we went over to help them move. And I could tell that they liked one another, but there was some red flags, and there were some conversations that were happening behind closed doors, as far as me talking with my son about just making sure that, you know, this was someone that he wanted to spend more time with. And Jen, it seemed like she was very unorganized while we were moving, and the homes seemed very disorderly. They seemed very dirty. They seemed messy. Her son didn't seem to have a whole lot of respect for her. These are things I questioned, because ultimately that was something that my son was around. Right. But Mikey just, you know, he really felt strongly about Danielle. I think that it was Mikey's first love. Mikey, you know, there's a lot of things that have been said and that will be said, because there's a pattern of behavior on their end. But I'm here to say that Mikey 100% genuinely was in love and cared for her so deeply.
Looking back, Katie, do you think Mikey was duped, was taken advantage of by Danielle and maybe even Jennifer?
I think that Mikey and Danielle both were taken advantage of by Danielle's mother. I think that they never had a shot at this. I think that she had her hands in so deep, and neither one of these young people had a shot at anything normal.
And what impact did this have on Mikey?
I mean, Mikey has spent the last 3 years just not Mikey. In the beginning, he was very happy and, you know, excited, and was enjoying being in LA, pursuing his dreams. And he went from this really happy kid who loved his family and was enjoying this new person in his life to just absolutely miserable.
Katie, do you ever regret allowing Mikey to get involved in this?
No, because even through the ups and the downs and the turmoil, and people have no idea what our life has been like for 3 years. There's been a lot of good that's come out of it. And we have proven to one another that we are a strong family and we are always going to get through whatever is put in front of us. That, we're here for one another and that we love one another. And, if our boys told us tomorrow that they didn't want to be out here anymore, we'd be okay with that. I guess that's the difference for us. We, throughout those 3 years, we saw a lot of things. And the one thing that I felt like both Danielle and Mikey were lacking was time off, time doing something without a camera in front of them.
Time to be a kid.
Yeah.
Correct. When we came to LA, my boys were both traditional actors, dancers. They, social media really wasn't a big deal for us. It wasn't something that we had really opened up to. And then in the acting world, you started needing, to have that following for certain auditions. So we were dabbling in it a little bit. But it wasn't a priority. We didn't feel like it was the end of the day if we didn't, contribute in some way to social media, because what people don't know is we were going to 5 auditions a day and I'd map it all out. And, we'd go from one to the next. I had clothes in the back of the car, different resumes for different job auditions. We were really gung ho about what we were doing out here. And I think that social media is what really changed it all. But at the end of the day, my kids, this is where they want to be. And as a family, we've now made this home. And I would like in a few years from now to be able to look back and say, we learned from this. Not only did we learn from it, but hopefully I can help another parent learn from it, that, no amount of money is worth putting your child in a situation that is going to damage them.
There have been allegations that Jennifer Archambeault misrepresented Danielle's age and encouraged sexual liaisons with her boyfriends, Mikey included, and that she may have induced a statutory rape situation.
So
that's a fairly serious charge, not against Mikey, but against Jennifer Archambeault.
Well,
I think she literally like sex traffics her daughter, for like a lack of better.
She did.
Well, that's an interesting question, and I want you to comment on that, Michael, in just a minute. But Katie, was your son dragged into an illicit sexual relationship by Danielle's mother?
I definitely believe that Jennifer encouraged certain behaviors, and she did misrepresent how old Danielle was, and none of us had knowledge of it, and until 1 year in, obviously, when we found out. But she was very inappropriate on lots of levels, as far as putting pressure on both of them to be with one another all the time. And, it was almost like it almost felt, now looking back, it's almost like a cult in a way, because, in Jennifer's mind, in order to date her daughter, you have to be with her daughter 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Otherwise, you don't love her. And these are all things that I noticed along the way. And, there's this misconception. I think people thought that I liked Jennifer in the beginning. And the reality of it is that I didn't know Jennifer. I was always respectful to Jennifer, but I'm a mom first, and I always raise concern where it was needed. And on several occasions, what people don't know is that I left many times with my son saying, no, absolutely not. And this isn't going to happen, or no, I'm not okay with this.
Michael, do you think that Jennifer Archambeault is trafficking her daughter, Danielle Cohn?
Without a doubt. I'm confident that Jennifer is committing what I would consider sex trafficking. She not only like encourages, but I've seen her cross a line in several occasions. Not only like as an adult, I've seen her make boys in social media her lock screen on her phone. I believe she had like some sort of crush on Mikey at some point, but I've watched her put people in situations where, like, for example, she would encourage Mason to stay in Danny's room, Mason being an adult and now knowing that Danielle is 15. That's a 4-year difference, and encouraging a situation to happen. I've watched her like take Danny to the store to buy contraceptives, and like these situations where that's like ultimately where I was like, this is insane. I've watched her continue to be like, you need to get a boyfriend, you need to post this. So, you know, it's my belief that she puts on this act, I guess, to make Danny seem older and then encourage her to have relationships that are beneficial to Jen's goal at the end of the day, whether that's more followers or make more money, whatever that may be.
Knowing the metrics, Katie, as you do in this world, what do you suppose Jennifer has made money-wise by exploiting Danielle?
Millions. Because I'm here to tell you, I can't disclose legally what Mikey's contract was for Bang, but I do know that she's had several different opportunities and she's made millions.
And how much of that money do you suppose has been set aside for Danielle's future?
I bet you not a lot. I'm going to say that there was a situation where she finally got a Coogan account because I had expressed some concerns because, again, we came from the traditional background. So we had, for our boys, Coogan trust accounts. And when we first met them, she did not. And I didn't understand because it was social media versus
a trust account. A Coogan trust account comes from the old Hollywood child
Jackie Coogan.
Right.
Yes. And so
is money set aside for that child when the child is older?
But it's 15%. It's not even that much. And so I was a little bit in shock that she didn't have one. But there was a situation that arose at some point that she eventually had to get one. And I think it's to my understanding that there's, again, I don't want to misrepresent something, but I think that there might be $800,000 in that. If that gives you any indication what 15% is of only certain endorsements that have come in after this age thing has been brought up. I think that there were closer eyes looking at things. And then I believe it's to my understanding that she eventually got a Coogan account. The one thing that I will say from the very get-go, my boys have both had checking accounts with debit cards or savings accounts with the debit card, and you can have them at the age of 14. Both of my boys got those at the age of 14. So when they made money out here, it could also go into their account. You have to be on the account with the child until they're 18, and then at 18, you can be removed from it. So my boys had debit cards. So when they would go and do things, I never quite understood why Danielle didn't have a debit card at 15 years old. And I was told by Jennifer that it was because in her parents, in their parenting agreement, it wasn't allowed, that Danielle's father would not allow it, which made no sense to me. But again, that was their personal information. So I just kind of said, okay, that's strange. Something that just doesn't make sense to me.
And I've
What's
watched
the biggest? Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I've watched Danielle ask her mom for her debit card, and it's always Jen's card because Jen lost it in the ocean when Danny was on the jet ski and needed to get gas for this jet ski. I've watched, she has like paid invoices or Venmo. Everything is from Jen. I expressed my concern to Matt even and was like, where is her money? Is it in a trust account? Brands like, well, I'm sure you know, NBC cannot pay a minor directly. Like that's against the law. They can't just pay a parent. It has to go to a trust account. So it's definitely a situation that was alarming for me as well.
Katie, what's the biggest tragedy of all this for Danielle?
That she's been robbed of so many things. She doesn't see it. And of course, she's going to, see these interviews. And I, to this day, 3 years later, I could be mean and say, horrible things, but I can't because she's a sweet girl and she's been robbed of every chance to be just a normal child. She wants to do some of these things for sure, and that's fine, but not to this extent. She has no idea how bad things really are because she's just adapted because it's her environment. It's the normal to her. So,
and what did Jennifer do to victimize Mikey?
I'll tell you, Mikey, and I have the proof. I have all of the proof. Mikey has always had a cell phone that's been paid by his father and I. Still to this day, we still pay for it. It's still the same phone number as the first one he got in LA. It's still in working condition, but she wouldn't allow him to have that phone. She went and got him.
Why was that?
Because she wanted to go get him one on her plan.
That she could control.
Well, she was able then to see who he was texting, his location at all times, and she was able to know exactly what was going on at all times.
And she held it over his head. I watched multiple times. She would be like, I'm going to turn off Mikey's cell phone plan. And I'm like, okay, why are you paying it? Yeah, like, why do you have that? And why is it such a thing that you're going to disconnect it? It's clearly because she wanted to be able to like have that power over Mikey and over Katie for that matter. Because what mother doesn't want to be able to contact their child and know where they are? And I'm sure it's very easy to manipulate a situation when you're the only adult and the only form of communication is through you.
And she could see everything he was doing. It was
what kind of a person does that, Katie?
Someone who is not right. I've come to believe that there has had to have something had to have happened in Jennifer's childhood that has made her this way, because I'm telling you right now, as a mom, just talking about it, I feel like I can't breathe. I'm out. I feel like we're finally on the other side of it, but I sit back and think about, yes, today I have my son and he's going to be okay because he has me as a mom and his dad as a dad and his brother as a brother, and anything that kid needs, we're going to make sure he has it. Counseling, whatever it is.
When you look at those pictures and the videos of Danielle on social media, they're not just appealing to other teenage girls and boys. They're appealing to adult men who are predators.
Correct.
What kind of a mother exposes her child to that?
A mother that's making a lot of money off of what that young woman is doing.
And what do you, as a mother, Katie, see as the absolute worst part of this for Danielle? You spent some time with her. You got to like her. You think she's a good kid who has been.
I actually love Danielle.
What happens to Danielle 10 years from now?
Exactly. That's the problem. Here's the thing. Danielle's going to wake up one day and she's going to realize that all these people that she was told were so bad because they were trying to stick up for her, there's going to be a light switch that goes on, and she's going to have been working since she was 12 years old, and She doesn't have, you know, you would think she would be in a really good position, but she's still going to have to work very hard her whole life. And she's not going to be right. She's going to need so much counseling.
And all of that lives forever on the internet. Every picture, every video, every image
Everything.
that is being
Everything.
exploited by bad humans,
Correct,
who have a purient interest in this, is out
and
there forever.
she is going to, I mean, it's going to affect her, I believe, for the rest of her life. And I think that I just wish there was a way that she could come out and be honest and be able to tell the world, you know, this is my truth. This is really how old I am. I wish she'd be able to get into some counseling, some family counseling. And if this is really what she wants to do, there's a way to do it where there's balance and class.
And I don't know that Jen is going to let her, as long as Jen's in the picture. I know that it's like very clear that Jen has not shown her daughter love or any attention. Like poor Dani doesn't know
what
anything
that
outside. Yeah. And so like, because of that, she's already developing into a young woman who lacks some of the essential, you know, kind of figures in your life that form you into a decent human being. And like, until Jen is out of the picture and Dani is with a loving family who wants to raise her and teach her and you know, actually show her how to be an adult, it's not going to happen. And that's what's really heartbreaking.
Here, I want to ask you both this question about the regulation here. I mean, obviously this world is vastly unregulated, and you look at YouTube and what it allows. YouTube will limit monetization. Not that I care about that, but it says something about what it pays attention to. YouTube will limit monetization on one of my shows exposing this, but allow monetization of the actual exploitation of the young child, Danielle. And it makes no sense to me. Again, we do it because it's the right thing to do, not for money, but it says something about the platform. They should be more worried about the exploitation than the reporting of the exploitation, don't you think?
I 100% agree with you. You know, when I was made aware of how old Danielle was, I was livid. I was heartbroken. I felt betrayed. And then I put all of that energy and effort into doing right by Danielle and my son. And I contacted everyone that I could think of. And it's amazing to me that I don't know, I can't speak for those other businesses and people. I guess it was their word against mine, but it felt at the time that they favored the Danielle situation because of a paycheck. I mean, they didn't want to have to believe anything else because they were making a lot of money. And the truth of the matter is that Danielle has another parent who's wants to be in her life, and
who's afraid to speak out is what I understand.
Yes,
because he'll be attacked by Jennifer. And he doesn't want to lose his daughter because he's afraid, or as the story goes, that Jennifer will turn her against him.
And it's like people have he has a career, people have jobs. Like Jen will use people like Dani's following to manipulate her fans into believing a situation and then like silencing the victims of that family. And Dani just has to like agree with it because her mom has the accounts. And that's also just as scary. I mean, you know, I've had brands that don't want to speak to me because of this whole thing, which I think is interesting that, you know, they would go out of their way to influence that negatively. I've watched her, you know, be like, if Mikey does this, I'm going to do this, and like manipulate Mikey into a situation. One of the reasons I started to feel uncomfortable is I felt like Mikey was trapped when I would witness it. And that's why it's important that all of us collectively can use our voice, because Katie's seen it outside of just this situation, and a lot of people in Hollywood are experiencing it, and it's literally the most like dystopian ecosystem in social media that exists, and we have a responsibility to step up.
Closing thoughts, Katie, how do we fix this?
I think that there
Danielle's
needs
not the only one out there being exploited, clearly.
No, Danielle's not. She is not. I think that we have to do better. I think that we have to have something put in place. I mean, before Jackie Coogan, there was no laws about putting, children in the entertainment industry's money, a portion of it to the side. I think the time has come that we have to do something and make a change somewhere that helps protect these kinds of situations, and we need to regulate it better. But I just don't know how that's going to happen because social media is such a private thing. You're not on a set per se. The set could be in your home, and I don't know how
It's
we
wherever
do
you
it.
are at the moment.
Right. And so that's a scary thing. So I don't know how we necessarily work that. Social media is a gray area for sure, but there's got to be a way.
Well,
There's
Michael, I
gotta-
think one of the ways to do it is by having a discussion like the one we've had here this evening. I appreciate you both being a part of this. We will continue to report on this. Michael, final thoughts from you tonight. Where do we go from here?
I think it's
you're in the
important.
industry, you make your living doing this, but again, you pointed the finger at people who are committing the exploitation.
I think we've got to continue to have conversations like this. Those within the industry, myself and Katie included, need to be able to look objectively at situations and not just stand by and not say anything for fear or for, what's going to happen. I'm going to lose this deal. No, it's like not worth it. Children's lives are at stake. We have got to do better as a society. We've got to do better. Platforms need to step up. Fans need to step up. They're enabling it just as much. I think, as a society, we've just got to do better. And having conversations like this is key to bringing awareness to these situations.
Michael, Katie, thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate it very much. We'll continue this conversation, and thanks for everything you're trying to do here.
Thank you, Chris.
If I hadn't talked to these people and you talked to them as well, Wes, I would find it hard to believe that YouTube and other social media platforms would allow this to happen. Is anyone at all regulating this?
No, and that's why it's been such a problem. That's why you have people like Maggie, who has been speaking out for years, and she's not alone. There have been people trying to bring awareness to this for a long time, and it really, even YouTube wasn't willing to do anything until Pink brought up the situation with Piper Raquel, and that finally got someone's attention. But few and far between. For every Piper and every Danielle, there's how many hundreds that we're just not aware of, or who are up and coming, or whose parents are right now logging onto YouTube to create that account so they could exploit their own children in the same way.
Michael Weist, the representative who works with Katie and Mikey Tuo, you saw him in the piece there. He's working within the industry to try to get a handle on some of these things, but even he says it's very difficult to do.
Well, yeah, there's just so much. I mean, when you talk about someone like Danielle Cohn, this is not a household name. Like my mom wouldn't know who Danielle Cohn is.
Exactly.
And the millions of dollars being earned from this one minor. That's why a lot of people aren't willing to do anything, because there's just too much money to be made, and it breeds a lot of corruption.
We've seen the CEOs of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter called before Congress to answer questions about content and the way kids are treated online. Do you think it's time for YouTube to answer some questions in front of Congress?
Well, absolutely. And, they're doing some kind of superficial things on the surface to make it seem like they're doing a whole lot more than they really are. Because if you're able to kind of fly under the radar, they're never going to bother you. And people can make complaints and flag and report. And like I said, I mean, sometimes it'll take a celebrity calling you out on Twitter before they'll even take an action.
Pink did with Piper Raquel.
Before they'll even take any kind of action. So you going in front of Congress and answering these questions may be the only thing that'll actually make that necessary change that needs to happen.
Well, we'll continue to push here on this show. Wes, as always, thank you very much. Have a wonderful holiday, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for joining us here on Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. We will continue digging into this very topic, and there's so much more to it. You've seen the Dad Challenge podcast. I'm sure he takes a look at this along with his collaborators, and we will continue to do the same. In the meantime, you can reach out to me at chris@predatorpodcast.com. Remember, we'll have more content coming out here on the YouTube channel, and the podcast is available anywhere you get your podcast. Predators I've Caught by Chris Hansen. That's it. I just recorded a new episode today, so I should know the name of it. And Discovery Plus, a couple series going on there, so check those out. In the meantime, have a wonderful holiday season, a happy new year, and we will see you very soon right here on Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. I'll be watching and listening.